Hello and welcome. In today's video, we are going to talk about what spiritual awakening is moving us towards and a central theme in the teachings of Eckhart Tolle. We might hit loads of bumps in the road on the way and even get sidetracked for years. But if you've started to wake up, you will, even though you may not have articulated it for yourself, have started to feel the pull towards letting go of your inner resistance towards your present moment experiences. You will have started to feel the pull towards letting go of your identification with the ego and all that it entails, and your identification with the five-sense reality. What's on the other side of this is a whole other relationship with life and reality, where the circumstances of your life no longer trigger you, where you are in tune with the natural flow of life, and where the world paradoxically both seems more illusory and more alive and vibrant at the same time. These are just some of the aspects of this profound shift that cannot adequately be put into words, but which has to be experienced. Surrender is intricately connected to the idea of living in the present moment. It is often misunderstood as a passive act, something akin to giving up, but in Tolle's perspective, surrender is a conscious choice that opens the doorway to a deeper dimension of consciousness. To be clear, it is a conscious choice that has to be made over and over again until it becomes your new reality. Because you've been so trained in the mindset of struggle and resistance that this is what you will default back to when life circumstances, or when your mind drifts into past regrets or future worries until you have completely surrendered. When you surrender, you stop resisting what is, and in doing so, you align yourself with the present moment, which is the only reality that truly exists. This also goes for your inner experiences, which is a very important point. In surrender, you allow the emotions that you feel to be what they are, and you fully feel them without resistance. The concept of surrender in Tolle's teachings is not about resigning oneself to a situation, nor is it about passivity or complacency. Instead, it is about acceptance of the present moment as it is, without the interference of the mind's judgments, fears, or desires. This acceptance is not an intellectual act. It is a deep inner recognition of the isness of the moment. It is the realization that whatever happens in the now is as it is, and resisting it only creates suffering. This realization is crucial because it marks the point at which you stop trying to change the external reality to fit your inner expectations, and instead begin to change your inner state to align with the external reality. Living in the present moment, as Tolle teaches, means fully embracing what is happening now without trying to project into the future or dwell on the past. The mind is conditioned to constantly seek something other than what is, often leading to a sense of unease or dissatisfaction. This is where the idea of surrender becomes vital. When you surrender to the present moment, you cease to struggle against the flow of life. This doesn't mean you stop taking action, but your actions are no longer driven by fear, desire, or a need to control the outcome. Instead, they arise naturally from the state of presence and acceptance. Surrender is deeply connected to the dissolution of the ego. The ego is a somewhat elusive concept, but it's very real, and everyone has one. The ego, in Tolle's teachings, can be described as the part of the mind that identifies with thoughts, emotions, and the idea of a separate self. It thrives on resistance and the need to be right, assert its own agenda. The ego holds on to grudges and attaches importance to its beliefs about reality and other people, and it can tell very convincing stories about all kinds of things and people. When you surrender, you are essentially letting go of the ego's hold on your consciousness. This does not mean the ego disappears, but its dominance over your inner life diminishes. In the space that opens up, you experience a greater sense of peace and clarity because you are no longer fighting against the natural flow of life. One of the most challenging aspects of surrender is that it often requires you to let go of your attachment to certain outcomes. The mind is constantly planning, strategizing, and predicting, all of which are future-oriented activities. Surrender means letting go of this need for control and being willing to accept that you cannot foresee or manipulate the future. This acceptance does not mean you become careless or indifferent to what happens, but rather that you trust in the intelligence of life itself, which is always unfolding in the present moment. Trust is an essential component of surrender. Trust in life, trust in the present moment, and trust in your own ability to navigate whatever arises. This trust is not blind faith, but a deep knowing that when you are fully present and not caught up in the mind's narratives, you are in the best possible position to respond to life's challenges. This trust also allows you to stay open to possibilities that the mind, with its limited perspective, may not be able to conceive. It is a very subtle trick of the mind when it convinces us that, just because it can't figure something out, it's untrue or impossible. Surrender is not about relinquishing your power or letting go of your ability to act. On the contrary, surrender often empowers you to act in a way that is more effective because your actions are no longer tainted by fear, desperation, or a need to prove something. When you surrender, your actions stem from a place of inner stillness and clarity rather than from a place of mental agitation or emotional turmoil. This often leads to more harmonious outcomes, even in situations that might initially seem unfavorable. In Tolle's teachings, surrender is closely linked to the idea of non-resistance. Non-resistance is the practice of allowing things to be as they are, without trying to force or manipulate them to fit your expectations. This doesn't mean you don't take action, but rather that you act without the inner resistance that so often accompanies attempts to change a situation. When you stop resisting, you conserve energy that would otherwise be spent struggling. This energy can then be redirected towards more constructive and meaningful pursuits. Surrender also involves a shift in your relationship with time. As with everything else, the mind attaches a lot of meaning to time that is not an objective fact, meaning that often causes suffering. You can observe this for yourself if you observe your thoughts related to time. The mind tends to be either in the past or the future, rarely in the present. This can both take the shape of regretting the past and stressing over the future, as well as ruminating bitterly over something that takes more time than you would prefer. Again, you are encouraged to observe your own mind to find your own examples of this. Surrendering to thee now means letting go of the need to live in the future or the past. It means recognizing that the only place where life actually happens is in the present moment. By surrendering to the now, you free yourself from the mental patterns that keep you trapped in regret, anxiety, or anticipation. This allows you to experience a deeper sense of peace and contentment because you are no longer in conflict with the flow of life. Tolle speaks about surrender as a way to transcend the limitations of the mind. The mind is a wonderful tool, but it can also be a barrier to experiencing the fullness of life if it is constantly dominating your awareness. Surrendering the mind's need to control and categorize every experience allows you to tap into a deeper level of consciousness, one that is connected to the essence of who you are beyond the mental constructs. This deeper consciousness is not concerned with the outcomes or the narratives that the mind creates. It is simply aware of the present moment in all its richness. This deserves some reflection. This idea is not new, but we tend to forget about it. Namely, that your experience of the five senses, whether it's the taste of food, the smell of a flower, or the touch of someone you love, becomes totally different if you are really present in your senses, as opposed to being partially somewhere else in your thoughts. As you go through your spiritual awakening, you will more and more be pulled towards the present moment, but you can align yourself with this process by consciously directing your attention to what is going on here and now. One of the paradoxes of surrender is that by letting go, you actually gain something much more valuable than what you might have been trying to achieve through force or resistance. When you surrender to the present moment, you enter into a state of alignment with life itself. In this state, you find that things often work out more smoothly, not because you are manipulating them to your will, but because you are in harmony with the flow of life. This doesn't mean that life will always go the way you want it to, but it does mean that you will be better equipped to handle whatever comes your way with a sense of peace and equanimity. And yes, things do have a tendency to run more smoothly, and things that you prefer seem to come to you more frequently when you are not attached to them. Another important aspect of surrender is the dissolution of the fear-based mind. Fear is one of the main obstacles to living in the present moment. It keeps you focused on potential future scenarios, most of which never come to pass, and prevents you from fully engaging with what is happening right now. When you surrender, you let go of the need to constantly protect yourself from imagined threats, and this allows you to experience life more fully. This doesn't mean you become reckless or ignore genuine dangers, but rather that you stop letting fear control you. You make wise, empowered, conscious choices instead of allowing your emotions to toss you around. As mentioned in the beginning, Tolle also emphasizes that surrender is not something you do once and then it's done. It is a continual practice, a moment-to-moment choice to let go of resistance and accept what is. This can be challenging, especially in situations where the mind is strongly attached to a particular outcome or where there is a lot of emotional charge. However, the more you practice surrender, the easier it becomes, and the more you will notice the benefits in your daily life. As you surrender more and more to the present moment, you will begin to notice a very real, tangible shift in your overall state of being, even in the core of your being. This shift can manifest as a sense of inner peace, even in the midst of external chaos. It can also lead to a greater sense of connection with others and with life itself. This connection is not something you have to create. It is always there, but it becomes more apparent when you are not caught up in the mind's constant chatter and resistance. But there is something more to it, as if a switch is very slowly being flicked inside as you are moving closer and closer to a breaking point. The practice of surrender also has a profound impact on your relationships. When you stop resisting the present moment, you also stop resisting others. This doesn't mean you agree with everything or never set boundaries, but it does mean that your interactions are no longer driven by the need to defend or assert the ego. This can lead to more harmonious and authentic relationships because you are engaging with others from a place of presence rather than from a place of fear or neediness. In addition, surrender allows you to experience a deeper sense of gratitude. When you are no longer fighting against life, you become more aware of the many gifts that each moment brings. This doesn't mean that every moment is pleasant, or that you should force yourself to be grateful for things that are genuinely difficult or painful. However, even in challenging times, surrender can help you to recognize the underlying beauty and intelligence of life, which can lead to a sense of gratitude for the experience itself rather than for any particular outcome. Tolle's teachings on surrender also point to the fact that true surrender is not something that can be achieved through effort. This might be the most difficult part of the whole process. It's neither something that can be grasped with the mind, nor something that we can achieve through effort. This means that the ways that we are used to do things are completely useless. It is completely effortless and can, in theory, be done right here and now, at this very moment and once and for all. But for most people, it's a long process of going back and forth between one state and the other. Thus, surrender is not about trying to make yourself surrender, but about recognizing when you are resisting and then letting go of that resistance. This is why surrender is often referred to as a state of grace. It is something that happens naturally when you stop trying to force life to conform to your ideas of how it should be, and instead allow it to unfold as it is. Ultimately, surrender is about returning to your true nature, which is always at peace, always present, and always in harmony with life. It is about realizing that the only thing that truly exists is this moment, and that in this moment, everything is exactly as it should be. When you surrender to the present moment, you are no longer at odds with life, and in that state of non-resistance, you find a deeper level of joy and fulfillment than you ever could through the mind's endless striving. This is not about looking at the world with rose-colored glasses. The present moment might, objectively speaking, be very painful. But as soon as the mind starts telling stories about victims, perpetrators, what will happen in the future, what the experience is telling you about the past, etc., you've moved out of the objective experience into the subjective realm of the mind, with its thoughts, evaluations, comparisons, stories, etc. In conclusion, the concept of surrender as taught by Eckhart Tolle is not about giving up or becoming passive. It is about a deep acceptance of the present moment as it is, without resistance or judgment. This acceptance is the key to living fully in the present moment, which is the only place where life truly happens. By surrendering to what is, you align yourself with the flow of life, dissolve the ego's hold on your consciousness, and open yourself to a deeper dimension of being. This state of surrender brings with it a sense of peace, clarity, and connection that transcends the limitations of the mind and allows you to live more fully and authentically. When embraced, it can transform not only your inner state but also your experience of the world around you. Make no mistake. This is a very real shift that is taking place on the inside, and as Tolle says, if any of this information resonates with you, it has already started, and there's no going back. The question is just how much your ego is going to kick and scream before you finally surrender.